But we begin this morning on the topic of marijuana. This week, Canada became just the second country in the world to legalize recreational marijuana nationwide. Our question to you this morning is, should the United States do the same? Give us a call. We've split our phone lines up a bit differently this morning. If you think marijuana should not be legal in any form, the phone number 202-748-8000. If you think marijuana should be legal only for medical purposes, 202-748-8001. If you think medical and recreational marijuana should be legal, 202-748-8002 is the number for you to call. You can also catch up with us on social media. On Twitter, it's at CSpanWJ. On Facebook, it's facebook.com/CSpan. A very good Saturday morning. You can start calling in now. We'll get to your phone calls in just a second. But first, the latest on the disappearance of journalist Jamal Khashoggi. New developments yesterday, including statements from Saudi Arabia saying that the critic of that country was killed inside the consulate in Turkey. This is the front page of the New York Times today, their story on it, noting that Saudi Arabia yesterday saying that it was effectively an accident inside the consulate. After 2 weeks of shifting stories, Saudi Arabia on Saturday said that its agents strangled Jamal Khashoggi, a dissident journalist, during a fistfight inside the Saudi consulate in Istanbul, and that 18 men had been arrested in the case. Saudi state media reported that Saud al-Qahtani, a close aide to the Crown Prince, had been dismissed, along with Major General Ahmed al-Asiri, the deputy director of Saudi intelligence, and other high-ranking intelligence officials. The Saudi official said General Asiri had organized the operation and that Mr. Qahtani had known about it and contributed to an aggressive environment that allowed it to escalate. Of course, that narrative contradicting earlier accounts from both Turkey and Saudi Arabia, and the Saudi statement yesterday not accounting for what happened to Jamal Khashoggi's body. President Trump on Friday night saying that Saudi Arabia's statement, though, was credible and that along with its announcement of arrests amounted to, quote, good first steps. Here's more from the president yesterday from Arizona.
Saudi Arabia has been a great ally, but what happened is unacceptable. We are going to see they've arrested, just for the people at the table, a large number of people having to do with the event that took place in Turkey and the consulate, the Saudi consulate. And it's a big first step. It's only a first step, but it's a big first step.
One more story on this topic, the congressional angle, Khashoggi's disappearance and the outcry over it. The Washington Post noting spurring critics against future Saudi arms sales, quoting Senator Rand Paul, who has repeatedly urged his colleagues to end sales to Saudi Arabia, saying he'll fight the next arms deal that comes before Congress. Last year, Paul and his allies were 4 votes short of blocking arms sales to the kingdom, but now there will, quote, be enough of a popular outcry that we could win, he predicted in an interview. Quote, we need to really have a full debate about supporting the war in Yemen. And in an op-ed published in the Washington Post, Senator Chris Murphy called for, quote, ending our military assistance, which has given the Saudis free rein in the ongoing horror in Yemen. Those are just a few of the stories today on the Khashoggi case. We'll keep an eye on any new developments this morning. And of course, if the president tweets about it, we'll let you know as well. But our question this morning for you in this first hour of the Washington Journal is about marijuana legalization in the United States. As we said, Canada this week became the second country to legalize recreational marijuana nationwide. Here's a few of the front pages from Wednesday of this week from various Canadian newspapers. This is Canada's Financial Post. Open for business, ready or not, is the headline there to the front page of the Globe and Mail. Day one after nearly a century of prohibition in Canada, cannabis is now legal. What happens next is anyone's guess. And then there's the Toronto Star and also the Star Metro of Calgary, both using the headline Green Light in their front pages. We're asking you, our viewers, this morning, want to get your thoughts. Here's some thoughts from a few members of Congress in the days after Canada's law became enacted this week. Ron Wyden saying that today Canada is recognizing what Oregonians and Americans across the country already understand. Marijuana prohibition is outdated and a dangerous policy. It's time to bring America's marijuana policy into the 21st century. Kamala Harris with a tweet this week. It's time for the United States to follow suit. legalizing marijuana at the federal level would make our justice system more fair. It's the smart thing to do, and it's the right thing to do. Democrat Ro Khanna, congressman from California, saying ending marijuana's prohibition isn't a radical idea. It's common sense. Let's expand legalization nationwide and create good jobs, generate tax revenue, expunge prior offenses, and bring restorative justice to the communities that were harmed by the failed war on drugs. And one more tweet from last week, Republican Congresswoman Vicky Hartzler tweeting about Drug-Free Friday, saying marijuana has been associated with higher levels of opioid pain medication abuse for trauma patients in post-operative settings. We're going to show you a few of the debates that have happened in recent days where this issue has come up, but we especially want to hear from you this morning, your thoughts on marijuana legalization in the United States. Again, if you think it should not be legalized, 202-748-8000 is the number. If you think it should be legalized for medical purposes only, 202-748-8001. And if you think it should be legalized for recreational and medical uses, 202-748-8002. We'll let you lead the discussion. First, Russell in Prince Frederick, Maryland. Go ahead.
Well, I was a police officer for 20 years in Prince George's County, Maryland, and it's just a disaster what marijuana's done to people. If you look at the policies and the policymakers, the people that are policymakers went to college, experimented with marijuana, and usually got their lives straight and finally became productive members of society. They don't go to inner city areas where the marijuana use has taken over the lives of people. And when we go ahead and legalize it, you're going to have pregnant mothers that are smoking marijuana, just like we have pregnant mothers smoking cigarettes. And doesn't matter what the law says or what doctors tell them. You're going to end up with mentally challenged babies from pregnant mothers smoking marijuana. If you look at the thought process behind it, there is no actual benefit to it other than it allows people to break the law. If we get rid of the laws, it doesn't remove the problem. It just stops punishing people for the stuff they've been doing that doesn't help them with their lives in any way.
So, Russell, let me ask you about your predictions for the future on this issue. At this point, 9 states and the District of Columbia have legalized recreational and medical marijuana use. 30 states have legalized just medical marijuana use. Do you think that this is inevitable at this point? What's your prediction?
I think it's opening a can of worms that this country's not able to handle already. We're giving up on a drug war that we never actually fought. We never took the gloves off in this drug war. We always had some backdoor politicians that were accepting money from drug lobbyists that were willing to accept selling America down the road. It was a bad idea in every way. There's no time that people are better off intoxicated. I can't imagine anyone thinking that. And I understand medically there's certain things about marijuana that potentially offer medical benefits. And if you pay attention to the science on it, the CBD oil content of marijuana is where the medical content comes in. The manufacturers and the growers of marijuana are not affecting the CBD content. They're affecting the THC, the tetrahydrocannabinol. They want the intoxicating effect. They're not breeding the plants to be better for medical purposes. So we have a better grasp on it. And honestly, is there any time that it's better to smoke your medicine instead of having it purified and cleaned and done sterilely? There are so many problems with this. It makes no sense.
Russell, thanks for the call from Prince Frederick, Maryland this morning. Frank, on that line, for those who think that marijuana should be legalized for medical purposes only. Frank, go ahead.
Yes. I really think we are opening a can of worms here. We're not really thinking long-term, critically, the effects of legalizing marijuana, the effects on the 20-year-old, the adolescents. That's their most productive times of their lives. And we're going to throw marijuana in there on top of a 30-year-old. I just think there is a medical use for it, and you shouldn't have to jump through hoops to get it. And I just really think we need to think critically about the long-term use of marijuana in this country, just like we need to think about Roe versus Wade, the long-term effects of that, doing away with the draft, the long-term effects of that. You look at that, you got to think long-term. You just can't think money, money, money. give me money, and that's going to solve your problems.
So, Frank, take us to long term. What's your fear?
The long term, I think it's going to destroy the productivity of this country. You're going to introduce marijuana to a young adolescent who's in his 20s. He's trying to work his way up in life, accumulate wealth, and now you're going to throw marijuana on him or whoever. And I just don't think legalizing marijuana is a very wise thing to do.
Frank, do you think it's going to be worse than the effects of alcohol and young people's exposure to alcohol?
Oh, wait a minute. Now, I think that marijuana should be decriminalized. Nobody should go to jail long term for a small amount of marijuana. I think they need to fix that. Alcohol has caused more death and destruction in this country than anything. But I still say I was a child in the 70s. I grew up in high school around it every day. And I know what it does to you, and especially young adults. When they get exposed to something, they don't know how to manage it. They don't know how to control it. And the next thing you know, they're moving on to other things. No, you need to think critically about it. Roe versus Wade, 50 million abortions. You add up 150. We've annihilated 150 million unborn Americans in this country. But nobody thinks critically. The fact that in 1972, the child that was aborted in 1972 would have gave birth to 2 kids. We killed 150 million unborn Americans in this country, doing away with the draft. Only 1% of Americans do any service to this country. We're in trouble, and we got to start thinking critically about these things.
That's Frank in South Carolina. Tony's up next. Albuquerque, New Mexico, on that line for those who think it should be legal for medical and recreational purposes. Go ahead, Tony, make your case.
Yes, it should have been done a long time ago. There is lots of evidence that it works medically, and the human body is real similar to the cannabis. And yes, I agree. It should be. The CDBs are working, and as far as getting high and stuff like that, I think we need to be very careful. But the criminalized aspect of it needs to go away, and that's all I got to say. It should have been done a long time ago.
One more from that line. Frank in Fisher, Louisiana. Good morning.
Hey, good morning. Thank you for taking my call. On the medical side, I knew when I was in my younger days, women that had their period, they would smoke marijuana to get relief. And I got a hold of some shingles. I came down with shingles, and that was so painful. If somebody had offered me a dose of heroin, I'd have taken it. And I don't do that. But the marijuana gave me relief from shingles, and that is, you talk about crippling, it's terrible. And the people that were sent to jail on felony charges for marijuana, they need to be pardoned so they can get their Second Amendment rights back. This was a scam to take away people's Second Amendment rights, among other things. But in the recreational part, if it's done in moderation, I mean, look at the alcoholics out there these days and the people on opioids. And in the cigarette industry, you're addicted. You're addicted. When I smoked, I can't smoke anymore. But when I did, I didn't have I had maybe withdrawals, maybe 2 days. Cigarettes, you're in trouble. And look at that industry. I mean, it's just killed people right and left.
That's Frank in Louisiana this morning. A few tweets as we've been having this conversation. Fred writes in, marijuana and all other drugs should be legal and available to any adult citizen. The real question is, do you own your body or does the government own your body? You are still responsible for your actions and will be held accountable, maybe. TJ saying medical marijuana, absolutely. Recreational marijuana, absolutely not. Rebecca saying recreational marijuana is legal in 9 states and medical marijuana is legal in 30. Many of these states are ruby red. See a trend? We'll keep looking for your tweets and your calls as well. Again, phone lines 202-748-8000 if you believe or if you believe marijuana should not be legal in any form. For those who think it should be just legal for medical purposes, 202-748-8001. For those who believe it should be legal, medical, and recreationally, 202-748-8002 is that number. We're having this conversation, but voters in 17 days will be able to make a decision on that in 4 states. Ballot measures relating to marijuana on the ballots in Michigan and North Dakota, Utah, and Missouri. In Michigan and North Dakota, those measures are on the legalization of adult use cannabis, the recreational side. In Utah and Missouri, it's on the medical marijuana side. This past week, during the Michigan governor's debate, that ballot question came up. Republican Attorney General Bill Schuette and Democratic State Senator Gretchen Whitmer discussed whether they support that ballot measure in their state. Here's what they had to say.
You know, across Michigan today, we have a huge opioid crisis where children get caught in the grip of addiction. I had a friend of mine who shared with me that his son was an addict, and he encouraged me to go learn more about this issue. This was several years ago, and I did that. And when you go to a recovery center, it just breaks your heart. I called the guy back, and we cried on the phone when he shared with me that he had to revive his son, who was collapsed on the floor because of opioids. And because of the situation we have with opioids and the grave concern I have about it, I'm opposed to Proposal 1 because I don't think we should put more drugs in the hands of children. And that's my viewpoint on this issue. And the other 2 proposals, I'm going to vote no on them.
Senator Whip.
Well, so I supported the medical marijuana back in 2008, and I was a co-chair of the embryonic stem cell initiative as well, because I took care of my mom at the end of her life, and I know what the promise of cures or the promise of relief during treatment would mean. Unfortunately, even though we the people voted yes, we had an attorney general who didn't want to promulgate rules and make it workable. And so now people are going to the ballot for recreational, and I'm going to be a yes vote. And as governor, I'm going to promulgate rules so that product does not get in the hands of our kids. We make sure that we collect the taxes, put the money into infrastructure and education and health care the way that it is supposed to be.
More on Proposal 1 in Michigan. This summary from the National Council of State Legislatures. The measure would permit individuals 21 years and older to use marijuana recreationally and to grow up to 12 plants. It creates a tax of 10% on marijuana sales at retailers, and business revenue it would go to local governments, K through 12 education and transportation infrastructure. The measure legalizes the production of industrial hemp as well. Municipalities, though, would be allowed to ban marijuana within their boundaries. That's just one state with marijuana on the ballot. We'll go through a few of the others this morning as we continue to hear from you on phone lines for those who think marijuana should be illegal, for those who think it should be legal just for medical purposes, and for those who think it should be legal for recreational and medical purposes. Theron's up next in Lawrenceville, Georgia on that last line. Go ahead.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
So I prefer to use the word cannabis. Marijuana was a word that was the title or the name given to the drug when it was made illegal many decades ago. I think which basically was a racist move. But anyway, a couple, 3 things. One,
Theron, why was it a racist move? What's the history there?
I read an article about it actually in a book about marijuana, and it was a big deal. The whole idea behind making it illegal was seen as a part of because it was so used prolifically in the black community, as I recall from the article. I'd have to go back and reread it, but I remember it basically having a racist undertone to the reasons behind making it illegal in the first place. But the governor of Colorado was interviewed recently, I believe, on C-SPAN about the drug there. He was actually politically against the legalization of marijuana, and when asked about it, he said that it did not bring a whole lot of money in, only like $220 million from a tax standpoint, but that it was, he was surprised to find out that they asked him about the usage by other people. He said the usage had not increased at all across the demographics. The youth weren't using it any more than they were using it before it was legalized, except in one demographic. He said the elderly people were using it a little bit more. And just on a personal note, note, I had visited a friend of mine in the hospital just a couple of days ago who's suffering from esophageal and liver cancer. They prescribed him something called Marinol, which is a synthetic CBD oil for temporarily until they can get him on some real cannabis-derived CBD oil, which has better properties for providing him some relief when swallowing food. My wife has got chronic back pain. She had surgery for lower back for spondylolisthesis. She would benefit greatly from medical marijuana. Georgia's slowly increasing the patients who can be prescribed medical marijuana, but it isn't going fast enough for me. And I think I just see nothing wrong with legalizing it recreationally as well.
There, thanks for the call. James, Whiteville, Virginia, you're next. Go ahead.
Morning, John.
Morning.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that. There was this preacher guy, minister, went around in the 30s and made it illegal.
James, I'm hearing that the minister made it illegal. Go ahead and just keep speaking through your phone.
He made it illegal, like a crusade type of thing, and that's why they made it illegal. That was back in the 30s. I can't remember the guy's name.
So what do you think should happen today, James?
I think medical should be approved by every state. I'd like to see the government pay for mine.
Why do you think that the government should pay for yours, James?
Because it's medical and be pharmaceutical. Like they pay for pain pills and all that. And
are you in chronic pain, James? And have you tried marijuana for that?
I've been smoking since '69, and just as I don't know, I tongue-tied right now, John. I can't talk.
One last question for you, James. One of the callers before you, I don't know if you were listening, said that he had heard an interview in Colorado with somebody saying that they didn't think that any more people were using marijuana after it became legal in that state versus before it became legal. Do you think that would be the case in Virginia, in your area?
I believe that's true. Yeah, it'd be the same. There's a lot of people who don't smoke it, drink instead, but I don't drink. I just smoke a little weed.
It's James in Whiteville, Virginia. Virginia, one of those states where marijuana is not legal either for medical purposes or recreational purposes. It's 9 states in the District of Columbia, green on that map there, where marijuana is legal for both. The blue states on that map where marijuana is legalized just for medical purposes. Wendy's next in Roseville, Michigan. On that line for those who think it should be legal for medical purposes only. Wendy, what do you think about this ballot measure going on in your state?
Well, I don't approve of the one for the recreational use because we've heard on I was watching a news program and they mentioned that with people that are driving when they're high, the auto insurance rates are going to go up because of these people that are out driving, and we have to worry about people driving drunk, and now we'll have to start worrying about people driving high. And I approve with the medical thing because I have heard so many people that you use the cannabis oil and it is not the actual marijuana, it is the oil that helps these people with their chronic pain and things like that. So I hope that they will allow the medical use. But recreational, no. I have never wanted to see that pass, and I'm going to vote no in Michigan on our election because I don't want to see these people driving or doing things that could injure themselves or injure other people.
Wendy, thanks for the call from Michigan. Again, it's Proposal 1 in Michigan. We'll get to some of the other proposals in the other states. But Andrew first, Radcliffe, Kentucky, go ahead.
Yes, sir. No, I used to live in California before I moved out here to Radcliffe, and I voted against it when they went to legalize it in California. I've seen it financially destroy people. People who used to use it medically, now all of a sudden it's legal recreational use. And I've seen people, instead of paying bills, they're now not focused more on their bills, but getting their next marijuana fix. I've seen it destroy people's lives in car accidents. I used to be a security guard out in California for 8 years of my life, and I've seen people get in accidents because of it, car wrecks. People steal more because now they need money for food. They don't have money for food because they're spending it on marijuana rather than saving it for food. I believe legalizing it is a huge mistake, although I do not agree with criminalizing it for, those people who are caught with it. I think it should be, lesser crime than what it is, but I do feel that it does not need to be legal in any form.
Andrew, what about the idea of expunging existing criminal records for those who have a criminal conviction when it comes to marijuana?
Again, I'm a firm believer in it should not be, heavily prosecuted the way it is. So, people who have charges for it should be expunged. We need to figure out a way, to make it not legal, but not as heavy as an offense.
Well, the expunging of past records is something included in the North Dakota ballot measure. It's measure number 3. The measure legalizes recreational marijuana for individuals 21 and older. It also automatically expunges existing criminal records for individuals with a criminal conviction of a legalized drug. Again, that summary from the National Council of State Legislatures, their wrap-up of state ballot measures. You can look up not just the ones having to do with marijuana, but hundreds of different ballot measures that voters will be voting on in just 17 days. Here's a few more tweets from some of you watching at home. Legalize and monetize is one of the tweets that came in. Steve saying red states will be the very last to decriminalize it, even well after the federal government has done so and has hopefully disbanded the ONDCP and DEA. Kevin Denver saying regulation means a safe product and reasonable taxation provides huge revenues. Law enforcement is freed up to pursue actual criminals and no more ruin lives at 18. And one more from Parkstorm saying no matter what Republicans think they know, smoking marijuana is nowhere near as dangerous as smoking cigarettes. As we said, this issue has come up in several recent debates that we've covered here on C-SPAN. One of them was this Thursday in Delaware. Democratic Senator Tom Carper and his Republican challenger Rob Arlett discussed this issue of marijuana legalization. Here's that part of that debate.
Do you favor the legalization of marijuana, Senator Carper?
Yeah, I think we should pass a federal law. I think I co-sponsored one actually that says it's not a federal crime to have or possess marijuana. It's not a federal crime. I think we ought to use it. I'm an old governor, recovering governor, and I think the states can be laboratories of democracy here. And we've got states like Colorado that are experimenting with this. Have a country like Canada, apparently, is going to experiment with this. And my view is we should let them, if they want to try out recreational marijuana, make that legal. Let them try it. Let them do it. And let us, before we change our whole country's approach, let us let a couple of states lead the way, and we'll learn from them.
Should the federal government play a role in that, or is that a state issue?
I think for now it's a state issue. There is a role for the federal government. I don't think there should be a federal law that says people could be arrested, convicted for possessing marijuana.
Mr. Arlett, both of those questions.
I would very much like to see that the federal government declassify the Class 1 classification currently for marijuana, because it prevents our veterans from going out and getting a natural source of pain relief. They have no choice. Our veterans do not have the ability to get medicinal marijuana to be able to make them feel better when need be, because of that federal law. So I would totally support that, to ensure that not only that our veterans are able to have more options, but also so that more testing can be done to ensure that we know what we got when it comes to medicinal use. I do believe it should be a states' rights issue. This is a natural plant. And again, I think the government has a tendency to do too much for all. That's not really what the federal government's role is. The power truly lies with the states. So to me, I would be just fine with pushing it over to the states. I'm not saying I would be supportive of it in Delaware or not. That would be a state's issue. I think there are, as Tom had stated, that there are some states experimenting with it. I think it's too early to say. But I think ultimately, I think the government should, at minimum, declassify it so our veterans can get cared for with other options.
It's just after 7:30 on the East Coast. We're talking this morning about marijuana. Should it be legal in the United States? Having this conversation the weekend after marijuana became legal for recreational purposes in Canada. Canada just the second nation to do that. And plenty of discussion about what could happen in the United States in the coming months and years. Here's a few stories looking ahead to what could happen on the federal level. This from Fox News this week. The White House is planning on tackling cannabis reform after the midterm elections, according to Congressman Dana Rohrabacher of California. Rohrabacher telling Fox Business that the Trump administration has made a solid commitment to fix marijuana regulation. I've been talking to people inside the White House who know and inside the president's entourage. I have talked to them at length, he said. I have been reassured that the president intends to keep his campaign promise on this. Rohrabacher says that the president has spoken in support of legalizing medical marijuana on the federal level and leaving the question of recreational marijuana up to the states. And one more story on federal policy here. This is from Roll Call newspaper this week. Oregon Congressman Earl Blumenauer, one of Congress's most vocal marijuana proponents, sent Democratic leadership a memo this week outlining steps that Congress should take to legalize the Schedule I drug. Quote, Congress is out of step with the American people and the states on cannabis, he wrote in that memo, citing polling showing that 69% of registered voters support legalizing marijuana. We have an opportunity to correct course if Democrats win big in November. He's the founder of the Congressional Cannabis Caucus, by the way, and he's been on this program many times in the past. It's an issue we've talked about when he's come on. You can check out some of his past appearances at cspan.org. Back to your calls again, phone lines. If you think marijuana should not be legal in any form, 202-748-8000 is the number. If you think it should just be legal for medical purposes, 202-748-8001. And if you think it should be legal for medical and recreational purposes, 202-748-8002. Terry is on that last line from Mississippi. Good morning.
Good morning.
Go ahead, sir.
How are you today?
Doing well.
I think it should be legal for medical and recreational because, there's people going to do it anyway. I don't care what the law says. They're going to do it regardless whether you legalize it or you don't. My other question is that, you got people out there that's drinking, and I've seen a lot of wrecks and all and stuff. I used to smoke it a long time ago. I quit. I haven't smoked it in years now. But people that do, they say it brings you up to higher drugs and all that. To me, that is false. I know people that smoke, and that's all they do. It don't make them want to go do heroin or anything like that, fentanyl or any kind of opioids and stuff like that. I just don't, they just don't do it. They go to work every day. I've got friends that smoke. They work every day. They're productive. They're not trying to live off the government like some people do. And people out there that drinks and stuff. To me, that's worse than smoking weed. Here you got doctors wanting to make it legal for medical use. That's good. But people out there drinking all the time, they have they got liver problems, just all kinds of things, with alcohol and all that. So I look at it that, if you're going to keep alcohol legal, then why not make marijuana, legal for medical and, recreational use? If you're 21 years old, it's your body. You ought to be able to do what you want with it.
All right, thanks for the call from Mississippi. Charlie's up next. Westlake, Ohio. Good morning.
Yes, I'm totally for legalization recreationally and medically. I have a medical marijuana card and in Ohio legally. And this year on the 4th of July, during my city's 4th of July celebration with fireworks, a police officer came onto my property and found a marijuana roach, and I was arrested, and I got 6 months probation and lost my teaching license. And I found that marijuana, because it was medical, and they said you couldn't have it in Ohio because we haven't got it growing here yet. So I went to Michigan and bought it legally there. And they said because I brought it across the state line, that's why I lost my teaching license. So it's really still causing a lot of people problems. It's about the only medicine that keeps my mind off my chronic back problem. I'm in my 60s. And it's caused so much trouble. So I'm very much a libertarian on this.
Charlie, did you get your medical marijuana card revoked as a result of what happened on with the arrest?
Yes, they revoked it, and now I've actually turned to opiates to help with my back. And I just think this is ridiculous. This is the only thing that kept me from needing back pain medication. And now, I'm still on probation for a few more months. And
Charlie, is there any chance you're going to get that card back?
Oh, I don't know. I want to get the chance of getting my teaching license back. They've taken away my ability to make a living, all because of a very small marijuana roach here in Ohio. So I think it's ridiculous what they're still able to do. And I'm sure this has ruined a lot of other people's lives. And as far as driving, I found that, the little bit of paranoia that marijuana gives you, you drive safer. Or alcohol, you just don't care at all when you're driving. Marijuana, you look over your shoulders 100 times and you drive a lot better. So, and then I read a study that the anti-inflammatory aspects of marijuana are absolutely helping people with dementia. And if you smoke marijuana, you have a less chance of getting dementia. So I'm all for legalization in every way.
What age did you teach?
I taught high school.
And what are you doing in the meantime now?
Uber driving.
Charlie, thanks for sharing your story. Good luck to you. David is in Texas this morning. David, go ahead.
Yeah, I think the biggest reason to legalize marijuana is for the industrial use, so that farmers can get back to cultivating marijuana for industry, so that we can stop cutting down so many trees. As far as personal use, I think the government would spend a whole lot less money on educating people on the personal use instead of fighting it.
That's David in Texas. Staying in Texas, Wesley is in Whitesboro. Good morning.
Morning. Good morning.
Go ahead, Wesley.
Yes, I think that it shouldn't be legal, but if it does have to be legal, that the safety net, in other words, all of the welfare and all of that should be cut out for anybody that's using it that cannot prove that they have a medical reason for consuming it. And that's kind of where I'm at. In other words, if you're going to use it for recreation, then you should not get any handouts from the government.
Wesley, tell me a little bit more about the proving aspect and how you go about regulating that. Do you think too many people are just saying this helps with this ailment to get a medical marijuana card?
Yes, you'd have to have a doctor's approval that you have to have this to help you, medically.
Wesley, thanks for the call this morning from Texas. More from recent debates. This from that very high-profile Texas Senate race. Texas Senator Ted Cruz and Congressman Beto O'Rourke talking about marijuana use last month.
There's a consistent pattern when it comes to drug use that in almost every single instance, Congressman O'Rourke supports more of it. So when he was on the El Paso City Council, he's one of the leading advocates in the country for legalizing marijuana. He wrote a book about that. Now, legalizing marijuana is actually a question on which I think reasonable minds can differ. I've always had a libertarian bent myself. I think it ought to be up to the states. I think Colorado can decide one way. I think Texas can decide another. But I'll tell you, Congressman O'Rourke didn't stop with marijuana. He introduced and he advocated for a resolution in the El Paso City Council calling for a national debate on legalizing all narcotics. That includes heroin and fentanyl and cocaine. And let me say, that is not, I believe, a reasonable issue on which people can disagree. Now, I suspect Congressman O'Rourke will say, we're just calling for a debate on it. Well, we're on a debate stage now. I will tell you, I think it would be a profound mistake to legalize all narcotics, and it would hurt the children of this country. That would be a serious mistake.
Senator, that's your time.
I agree with you.
Representative, please.
To be clear, I don't want to legalize heroin and cocaine and fentanyl. But what I do want to ensure is that where in this country, most states have decided that marijuana will be legal at some form, for medicinal purposes, for recreational purposes, or at a minimum will be decriminalized, that we don't have another veteran in this state prescribed an opioid because the doctor at the VA would rather prescribe medicinal marijuana but is prohibited by law from doing that. Another older woman with fibromyalgia who's not able to use medicinal cannabis because it's against the law here, and another African American man, because more likely than not, that's who will be arrested for possession of marijuana, to rot behind bars instead of enjoying his freedom and the opportunity to contribute to the greatness of this country. Yes, I want to end the war on drugs and specifically want to end the prohibition on marijuana.
If you want to watch that debate in its entirety, you can do so at cspan.org. One note on that Texas Senate race, the Houston Chronicle's editorial board today endorsing Beto O'Rourke for senator. They write, with eyes clear but certainly not starry, we enthusiastically endorse Beto O'Rourke for U.S. Senate. The West Texas congressman's command of issues that matter to this state, his unaffected eloquence, and his eagerness to reach out to all Texans make him one of the most impressive candidates that this editorial board has encountered in many years. Despite the long odds he faces, and they note pollster Nate Silver gives O'Rourke a 20% chance of winning, a Beto victory would be good for Texas, they write, not only because of his skills, both personal and political, but also because of the manifest inadequacies of the man that he would replace. That's the Houston Chronicle's editorial board today. Ted is in Warrenton, Oregon. Good morning.
Good morning. As far as the conversation this morning, I find it kind of shocking. Here in Oregon, of course, we're legal on the medical and the recreational, and you cannot drive down any Oregon town main street without seeing at least a half a dozen dispensaries. With that said, you can see the freedom that has happened over time. I currently and have always been a marijuana smoker. I'm 60 years old now. I'm a highly decorated Air Force veteran, get my health care at the VA, been very forthright with the VA, told them that I am a marijuana smoker, and they have no problem with that. With the conclusion of this morning's conversation, I find that the money that has been generated into the state of Oregon has been a boatload of money. And so any state that doesn't want to do it, I don't understand the whole point. Nobody's dying. Nobody's a pillhead. Nobody's on opiates. Nobody's dying of fentanyl. It's a moot conversation. Thank you.
Ted, before you go, did you see a big jump in the number of marijuana users in your area after it became legal? We lost Ted. Jay is in Silver Spring, Maryland, on that line for those who believe marijuana should not be legal. Go ahead, Jay.
Hi, thank you. Good morning. Let me first say that I am a recovering addict, and today just happens to be my 26th year without the use of any drugs or alcohol.
Jay,
and my
congratulations to you.
Thank you. My personal experience. Your former caller had a good point. Everybody, no, it doesn't affect everybody, but the majority of people that are affected are the children, and they will be stealing it from whomever is in that household smoking marijuana. The point that I'm trying to make is that I hope these legislators and all these educated people take a look into the drug treatment centers. You're spending billions of dollars in money fighting an opioid crisis when the first drug of choice that everyone uses is marijuana. It always leads to another drug, and it always turns out bad and will continue to do. This is ridiculous. This is a moot point. It should not be legal. Take a look at what's going on in the treatment centers. Ask those children, 12, 13, 10 years old, what their first drug of choice was. And they will 9 out of 10 times say marijuana. It needs to be stopped.
Jay, appreciate the call this morning. Bill, Albany, Georgia, you're up next. Go ahead.
Yeah, how you doing?
Doing well.
I'm a firm believer of legalizing it. You know, they're going to do it. People are going to smoke pot, whether you say it's illegal or not. All you do is cause a boatload of problems for a lot of good people that smoke pot. Okay, and as far as driving and the insurance rates going up, people have been driving smoking pot for way, way many years. So that thing where all of a sudden, just because it's legalized, everybody's going to be smoking pot and driving, and the insurance rates are going to triple or something. That's crazy. Ex-Speaker Boehner is now advocating on the internet about investment opportunities for marijuana. He has his forum thing with investors and Republicans about investing in marijuana. It's on the internet. And so it's old white people, just like your last caller, who just have this thing about anything new, you can't do it because it's new.
Well, I'm not sure the last caller identified his race, but talk to me about the laws in Georgia. Right now, it's not legal for recreational or medical purposes. Is there a movement in Georgia, as there is in many states, to start that process, at least on the medical side?
Yes, if we could ever get by the voter problem we have here as far as limiting people to be able to vote and all that stuff. But, yeah, if Stacey Abrams becomes governor, she's a black woman, a Democrat, we had just barely even got to the point where we might have for extreme cases for marijuana oil to be used for like autism kids and things like that. And it's just the same, it's the older people running the show who have no idea. They were brought up a certain way. But of course, drinking to excess is absolutely no problem. Driving while drunk is no problem. But as far as because it's a white thing. Drinking is associated with white people. Smoking pot is associated with black people. And if it's associated with black people, it has to be bad. I'm a white male, and I'm an ex-Air Force veteran, decorated, and I'm not disabled. And I would love the opportunity to smoke pot. The only problem is, if I do, I'll go to jail in Georgia. And just like hundreds of other black people, or thousands, I should say, in Georgia, for a roach going to jail for doing time, having a freaking, record that can't get off. They can't get jobs, because of that, or decent paying jobs. And you wonder what, why everybody's up in arms about, the black people are up in arms about it. Because the whole system is rigged against them, but it's all for the white people.
That's Bill in Albany, Georgia this morning. You mentioned John Boehner's involvement in this issue. This is the Market Watch story from back in April of this year. The legalized marijuana movement welcomed the news Wednesday that two prominent former politicians were joining a cannabis company. John Boehner, the former Speaker of the House, and Bill Weld, former Republican governor of Massachusetts, who was the 2016 running mate of Libertarian presidential candidate Gary Johnson, joined the advisory board of Acreage Holdings, which owns cannabis license and assets in 30 states where cannabis is approved for medical or recreational use. Boehner tweeted that he was making the move because his thinking on cannabis has evolved and that treating it more leniently under the law could help in the battle against America's opioid crisis. That's the story from back in April this year when that news came out. Tim, Rutledge, Vermont, good morning.
Good morning. I've seen the pot go from illegal to legal, and the people I know, after it was legal for a year, 9 out of 10 of them didn't smoke it anymore. And you're talking about people who've been smoking for 30, 40 years. It was more of a thing where it's illegal and a little racy thing to do. And once they had all they wanted, and the quality was up, that they didn't even bother with it anymore. And it leading to opioids. In Vermont, you couldn't find heroin, cocaine, any of those drugs. And then once the doctors, they got tough with the doctors were the ones that were creating all the opioid addicts. And when they got tough with the doctors and told them to cut off the prescriptions, the people were left addicted and had to turn to heroin. Now we got an incredible heroin problem in Vermont. Just incredible. And that's a state where you never heard the word heroin ever before. And now the last 15 years, you got people dropping dead all over. It's unbelievable. And the marijuana was first made illegal by some politicians when they found a way that they could make paper and other products from pulp. They own giant tracts of land down along the East Coast, and they made the marijuana illegal so it would make all their forest property valuable. And that's the whole reason that they made the marijuana illegal.
That's Tim in Vermont. David is in Wakeman, Ohio. Good morning. Go ahead.
Good morning. Thanks for taking my call. Yes, I do think marijuana should be legal with two non-negotiable prerequisites. One, it not be available in smokable form. Smoking anything is not good for you, and that's indisputable. Two is the legal age to purchase marijuana, I believe, should be 25. That might be kind of tough to enforce, but that's what I think.
Why 25, David? Talk us through that a little bit more. Why not 21 like alcohol?
Well, obviously, the more, the older a person is, the more they mature. 25, you're probably graduating from college and you know more of, what you want to be and do and everything. I know that alcohol, like in a lot of states, it's either 18 or 21. But I do think it should be legalized with those two prerequisites. Not only are the states going to generate tax money from it, but that's also money they're going to save from, incarcerating people for even the tiniest bit.
David, thanks for the call from Ohio this morning. VA Texan writing in, dope is for dopes. That should be a national consensus, and possessing or using it should be illegal in every state. B&J saying weed should be legal, ban alcohol. Look at babies, fetal alcohol syndrome, doomed for life. Alcoholics who kill while driving, alcoholics who don't support their families, alcoholics who kill their pancreas and liver. It's a scourge. Just some of the conversation taking place at C-SPAN WJ. One more recent debate where this issue came up. This South Carolina's 1st District Republican Katie Arrington and Democrat Joe Cunningham discussing legalizing both medical and recreational marijuana. Here's what they had to say.
I do support medicinal marijuana. I think that the FDA and the career politicians have let that drag on too long. That is something that should be a Schedule II narcotic. My mother, God rest her soul, because I had to give her morphine when she was in incredible pain dying of COPD instead of medicinal marijuana or cannabis, she suffered tremendously and slept. I've watched epileptic children come before my committee at 3M in the State House, who their only way to get through the day is through medicinal marijuana. I will work hard to ensure that we keep our promise to our community on that, but also respecting the law. It should become a Schedule II narcotic, and we should ensure that our law enforcement has the tools that they need to protect our communities.
We had a Veterans Roundtable in Mount Pleasant last week, and one of the veterans there was talking about how he went in to get treated and they just prescribed opioids. He got addicted to OxyContin. Whenever sometimes medicinal marijuana would have sufficed. I think medical marijuana should be legal. I'm not sure it should be a Schedule II, the same level as OxyContin. I don't view it as that strong, but I think it should be legal. As it relates to recreational marijuana, I think that should be left up to the states to decide. I think the federal government becomes too involved in our lives sometimes, and I think that should be a state issue determined on a state level.
That South Carolina 1st District debate and all of our debates available at our Campaign 2018 website, all available at cspan.org. Time for a few more calls in this first segment of the Washington Journal today, discussing whether marijuana should be legal in the United States. Phone lines 202-748-8000 if you think it should be if you don't think it should be legal in any form, if you think it should just be legal for medical purposes, 202-748-8001. And if you think it should be legal for recreational and medical purposes, 202-748-8002. Philip in Michigan, good morning. Your thoughts and your thoughts as well on that ballot measure. In Michigan, it would be to make it legal in recreational form across the state.
I got my absentee ballot sitting here. Yeah, I voted for it. I think it should have been legalized a long time ago. To your guy from the Air Force, thanks for your service. And marijuana has opiates in it, so that is why it's so difficult for those in the military who were prescribed opiates, and I'm talking about like Norco and other hydrocodone. The military will not allow you to take both. They're afraid you're going to smoke pot and take your pills and kill yourself, so they'll cut you off of your pills if you're smoking marijuana, and they've really cut back on the hydrocodone thoroughly, because I've got a friend of mine who they in fact, most of the people in the state that I know of, they will not give you allow you to have marijuana and take the pills. And I started smoking when I graduated in 1970. I started smoking then. I'm 66 now, and I have often drove and smoked. It's like, I don't think it's going to change anybody's attitudes regarding anything. You got kids out there, when I was a teenager, they're going to try it. If they like it, they're going to keep smoking. You're not going to really change anything. And it's like I told people long ago, they should just legalize, tax, and regulate everything, so you know what you're getting, and the government gets their money. It could pay off the national debt, as far as I'm concerned. And I sure do appreciate you guys what you're doing there. Thanks a bunch.
Philip in Michigan. Edward is in Manchester, Connecticut. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for calling. First thing I want the public to be aware of is the boys and girls in blue are sworn to uphold the law whenever they see the law broken. And I think it would make their jobs a lot more easier and safer if they had some form of recreational use for it in a certain amount. It should also be regulated, sort of like alcohol. You got to reach a certain age, I think, before you let the younger ones smoke it, because their brains are still developing until they're 25. And it might even, I don't know, it might even affect their judgment as far as, recreational sex. I mean, we don't need kids having kids, because
Edward, do you think 25 should be the age that you can start using it recreationally if it were made legal?
Well, to tell you the truth, I don't think it's a state thing. I think it's more of a national thing, because I think that the American people should, how we're supposed to be self-governed by the vote in America. That's the way America is supposed to be, and how we're supposed to vote on the laws we all have to live by and enforce. And just like everything else that the representatives put on the floor of our House up for vote, it's we, the people of the United States of America, that's supposed to be voting on everything. An ounce of prevention's worth a pound of cure, my mother always said. And it's our right, God-given right, to protect our right to vote. and it's not supposed to be limited to just representatives. The reason it is because the Queen of England had her eyes on our charter oaks to build her ships and to raid, pillage, and plunder other nations of their wealth.
So, Edward, bring us back to marijuana here before we end.
Well, all problems are connected like the food chain. That's what I'm trying to say. And whatever they vote us into, we can vote ourselves out of once we make our vote count on the 4th of July on Main Street in Hartford, Connecticut at 8 o'clock in the morning.
All right, that's Edward in Connecticut. Dee is in California, in Fresno. Last caller in this segment. Go ahead.
Good morning. I am a parent of a special needs child. She has a severe seizure disorder. She's placed in a home. California has made it legal for recreational and for... Are you there?
Yes, ma'am. And for medical purposes?
And for medical purposes. So I was in a meeting this last week, and I'm noticing they've got my daughter on 6 seizure medications. Never in my life have I seen this amount of seizure medication given to a 100-pound girl. I asked him about the CBD oil because it's proven to stop seizures. What they said to me is, oh, no, we can't give her that because of the federal. So my thing is, I think the CBD oil and the hemp portion of it needs to be relooked at the federal level. However, when California legalized all of this, how can they discriminate against special needs children and not give the CBD oil because she's placed in a state-controlled facility? I don't get this. There's no law that doesn't require this. Is it because they want the funding for the Medicaid, for the drugs, which totally drugs are out? She was not even she couldn't comprehend anything. So I'm wondering what happened.
Dee, thanks for sharing your story. Dee, our last caller in this first segment of the Washington Journal today.